What's up, hobby friends, and welcome back to Paint Bravely, the podcast where you can find a little bit of encouragement, discover new ways to make your hobby more fun, and most importantly, learn to paint bravely. All right, we got I guess it's an exciting episode. I mean, there's always a new, descriptive word to call an episode each time, but it's good. It's good. We've been hanging out, we've been doing stuff, and then we just went on a nice little road trip, and we got lots to talk about, which is pretty great. We're both back in our hobby spaces. You might be able to hear some cats rustling around on Brent's end over here. But it's good. We're feeling good. So why don't we start, Brent, then with some stuff that we've been up to.
Yeah, these cats are definitely happy to see me. See, You and I, Casey, have just spent 2 weeks together, and we're now reconvening for this podcast to debrief a little bit and tell you folks about it. And busy. So when last we spoke in episode 119, there was an army arrayed in front of us. Yeah, and we thought it'd be funny not to address the cat in the room, as it were. And why don't you tell us just a little bit about that project, Casey?
I guess we can talk about a little, some of the specifics, right? Just a smidge.
A little bit.
But yeah, we've been painting this Imperial Guard army, which is pretty cool. Like, we were both a little bit kind of skeptical, I think, at first, but we've now that we've painted, 2,000 plus, I think that's like 2,400 points or something of Imperial Guard. I think we both kind of changed our mind a little bit on how we feel about those models in that army and where things are going with that. But yeah, we did this really cool blue ice kind of camouflage look with everything, and we did these nice batch painting steps, and it was good. It was real good.
Yeah, we definitely flexed our muscles on batch painting. We had a lot of little techniques that we worked our way through. We got a lot of airbrushing. We used some silly putty when needed. We just ground it out with brute force, sitting in one spot and time-lapsing it when needed. And there were definitely moments when we were not sure. I don't know. I haven't painted a lot of Imperial Guard before. Have you?
I painted a Start Collecting box, so a tank,
that's right.
A couple of commissars, one of those Sentinel walkers, and then a handful of the I don't even know what they're called. Just Cadian troop guys. Yeah. But none of the new stuff, though. Like the newly released stuff. So all older, yeah.
So it's an army that has recently gotten a refresh. Some new tanks, definitely new troopers in that army. The old troopers were at least 25 years old for Imperial Guard, Astra Militarum. And the new models are pretty good. So, I painted a couple of one-off models here and there, nothing serious, but this is one of those armies where the numbers really make it. Painting one or two toy soldiers is fun and all, but painting, what do we have? Well, it's probably like a platoon of soldiers, a little over a platoon of soldiers.
It's a lot, yeah. It was a good amount.
A company of tanks. I don't know how those are arranged, but it was a good old pile of toy soldiers, good old pile of toy tanks, and it all came together for us. We were worried at stages. We didn't know how to resolve certain elements as we were going, but we did get it figured out. And Snuffles in particular, very, very happy to see me home. It's nice to be missed.
Nuts with that microphone. We were talking before this, and this wasn't happening at all. Like, none of this was happening. It's really funny that it's like, all right, let's hit that button. Let's go start this episode. And the cats go nuts. It's pretty funny.
She was pretty upset that she couldn't be in episode 119 because we recorded from your house, Casey. Yeah,
it makes sense. Makes sense. Well, next time you can bring her in one of those nice little cat carry-ons,
Next time. I'm sure she'll love that. Yeah.
That'll be so good, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the fun things about being together is we learn from each other a little bit, and we talk all the time, but sometimes just being in someone else's hobby space, seeing how they work, seeing what they keep close at hand is like really handy in communicating a few skills that you don't just get from watching the YouTube video or whatever. But
that's true. There's a lot of behind the scenes kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So I know that in most of your videos you do have your sandbox, but for whatever reason I really connected with it this time around, maybe because I used it for like an hour and a half straight.
Yeah.
But I keep my basing sand separate. I've got my different grain sizes in different little Tupperwares.
Interesting. Okay.
You keep all your grain sizes and all your pebbles just all mixed together in one big box.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And I have come to really appreciate that. You put glue on the base, you paint it right on, you dunk the base in the combined sandbox. You get all kinds of variety on there.
Yeah.
Little grains of sand, little pebbles, slightly larger pebbles. It's a nice mix, and I like it.
Yeah, the beach sand in particular gives you that variety. You also get some shells in there sometimes. Like you get chunks of things, and I feel like when they're mixed, you can kind of go, oh, okay, I'm gonna grab like with the front of this base. I'm gonna dip and scoop that front section. There's like a nice hero rock kind of out front, so I'm gonna pick up that piece, and you get a little variety every time you go into the box. Yeah.
And if you are trying to be random and like, okay, I'm going to glue 3 larger pebbles to this base and then add some sand, that's not random. That's your brain trying to make it random. And the true randomness of just gluing and dipping, I think actually adds a lot. I'm not going to mix all my sand together, but I will make myself a new Tupperware.
Well, you've got beaches.
A variety.
Go to the beach. Yeah, you dig a little. It's not very big Tupperware, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring my big Tupperware to the beach.
Yeah,
I've done this before. I've spray painted sloops at the beach. I've spray painted models at the beach. I can go and make eye contact with the beach goers as I fill up Tupperware and put them in my backpack.
When I did it, I went to a corner because I was on like a jetty, so I was like backed up against this part. But I was digging around. I was looking for kind of a certain mix, right? Because I was on a real rocky beach. And yeah, I got some looks. But I was also filling like a plastic bag at the time. So I was like, oh no, before I leave, I need to stop here. And I had a shopping bag in my car. So I was just scooping with my hand and filling this shopping bag. And then that bag sat in my car for probably 4 months before it dried out completely. And then I put it in the Tupperware. I want to make sure there wasn't anything alive in it. You know what I mean? You never know.
Did your car smell? Yeah, I don't.
No.
Okay. It's okay to like leave it outside for 4 months. Leaving it in your car, that's a bad idea. Yeah.
No, I forgot about it. So
okay. Okay, just let it dry out a little bit in your car.
I'm saying it ended up working out real good because it dried out, but I definitely forgot about it.
That's one of the plot points in Grumpy Old Men is they're catching fish and leaving them in each other's cars. You're not supposed to do that. Not on purpose. That's a bad hobby idea. Yeah.
Well, leave it out somewhere that you know about. Let it dry.
That's right. Now there's some people out there that'll say, no, you gotta bake anything you get from outside at 450 degrees for half an hour. I don't know about that. Like, what are you afraid of? You afraid of the shrimps coming out of the sand and taking over your house? You gonna get some sand fleas? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Depends if sand fleas really thrive off of Elmer's glue. If they're getting all the nutrition they need that way. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and even being just stuck in a Tupperware jar for however long, like it's not gonna end well. Like they're not gonna be around. Yeah.
When you prime sand fleas with Chaos Black, that's when they really find their power and they turn on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Paint Bravely, the podcast, is not responsible for anyone who gets a termite infestation by listening to any of our strategies, techniques, tips, and advice.
I mean, but don't bring like old wood in your house. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Casey, you're going to have to lead this one because I'm a little incapacitated by this snuffle situation here.
Well, I mean, we were on the sand. You were using the sand, and that was pretty neat. And I was telling you how I was getting my sand and what it was like. And now I'm thinking, Maine sand might be a little different than West Coast sand. I got my sand up in Oregon, like on the coast up there. So Nevada sand, even where I'm at, it would be different. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Like Maine sand beach, there's maybe more grassy stuff in there.
They also have big grains and small grains. I in one trip to the beach, I can fill up multiple Tupperware containers with different grades of sand. I also have, shells. I got a good shelly container, a couple of good shelly containers, barnacles, tiny mussels, all that stuff. Even a few little crabs, few little crabs.
Oh yeah, you get those alive, not alive crabs, but the the husks, whatever.
The moltings.
The moltings, and just cover them in resin, and they'll be fine. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll definitely be fine. Definitely be fine. Anyway, another thing I learned from my buddy Casey. Silicone mat. I gotta order me a silicone mat. That was perfect.
Yeah, I converted you on the silicone mat for sure.
Yeah, you taught me.
That's pretty funny. I think we've talked about it a few times on the podcast, and you kind of gave me those weird looks. You're like, I know what you're talking about, silicone mats over your desk.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta get together with your buddies, see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Try things out, and there are so many tips and ways of doing things on YouTube, but sometimes it just doesn't sink in. Sometimes, sometimes you're like, oh, that's a good idea. I want to try that. But there's an activation barrier to these things of actually giving it a shot.
That's true. I mean, you do have to kind of have the things or be exposed to it in a different way in order for you to make the leap of actually going, no, I'm going to go out and buy that thing. I mean, I can talk about oil washes or enamels or airbrushes or whatever, however many times. That doesn't mean that somebody's going to run out and go buy those things and, try it. You gotta see it, I think, and experience it to really be like, oh, okay, this is the way to go,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
The silicone mat. Yeah.
So
it's good.
We were out shopping on the first day together, and we had just gone to Panda Express, and then we were figuring out what we needed to really get started with this project. And you dropped me off at Home Depot, and I walked out with 20 feet of dowels, 20 feet of lumber, of round 1 1/4 inch diameter pine.
Yes.
And then I was like, Casey, you got a radial arm saw? He's like, yeah, I got one from Christmas. I haven't used it yet. Like, give me that radial arm saw. And I cut all those dowels into 3-inch sticks, and I put some poster tack on the top of each one and got you some painting handles.
Yeah. We had to go through and basically start from scratch, right? Like make all the painting handles, and it's pretty sweet because now I got like 50 some odd painting handles.
You have 75 painting handles.
75 painting handles. That's how much we needed. Yeah. Which that's definitely something that I learned from you being here. Like, that getting the painting handles and getting that situated and doing like a batch paint, it's really not that difficult actually. Like I have a radial arm saw, right? I got my miter saw. But even then, like, you can have them cut all that stuff at Home Depot if you really wanted to, and it wasn't that expensive. Each of those, what are they, 6 foot, 8 foot long sections of dowel were like $5-6 or something.
They were 4 foot long, but yeah.
Either way, not. I'm saying it's not terribly expensive.
It's a worthwhile investment.
Yes, exactly. Worthwhile investment that you could probably actually get done. It makes a lot of sense. I like it. Also using actual like poster putty that is meant for posters and paper and putting on walls. Completely different kind of material than like I'm used to for mounting models. And I don't know if it's just the brand or anything. Something's a little bit different.
Yeah, we used 3M this time. That's what we found at Office Depot or wherever, Staples, wherever we were.
Yeah. Same, all the same. Yeah. I in the past I've used like red grass's stuff, and I've had this other kind of janky stuff that just doesn't quite work right, or like the red grass stuff works fine, but it eventually kind of breaks down and gets sticky, like, and doesn't come off the model, you know? Yeah. So I've had issues with that in the past, and at least so far everything's been pretty nice with this stuff. I don't know if you mess with it enough, when you're playing around with it in your fingers, it will break down.
Yeah, that happened to me for the very first time. I also had a lump of the Loctite blue tack stuff with me, and I was just playing around with it like it was silly putty, and it just hit a point where all of a sudden, instead of sticking to itself, it just slimed all over my hands and just adhered to the skin instead of itself. I hadn't seen that happen before, but blue tack putty has its limits. It is, it'll do as good as it can for as long as it can, but eventually it will betray you, and it did betray me. And I just I had blue gunk all over my hands. I had maybe like 2 models worth of blue tack putty for bases. Just playing around with it, and all of a sudden it was all over my hands. I couldn't roll it into a ball anymore. I had to.
It was very funny because all of a sudden Brent's like,
"Oh no! House and scrub my hands for like 5 minutes with soap and water to get it off."
Yeah.
I had to put alcohol in my hands to try to get it off. It was something terrible happened there.
So yeah, we definitely discovered a limit on the putty. That's good to know.
It is for mounting and holding, not for playing with like silly putty is.
Yeah, silly putty, no issues. At least that I've ever found.
Tell the people about silly putty. We had some fun with silly putty.
We did. We used a lot of silly putty for like a lot of different things. I mean, I feel like I've been on the silly putty train for a while now.
You have.
Like I've got eggs,
I've used a little bit of silly putty, but this is one of those things you really taught me on this trip, was to appreciate the
silly putty. Yeah. No, it's good. It's just sticky enough, and you can mask anything with it, and you can paint over it, and it's not an issue, and you can just pull it up, and it's fine. It's still silly putty. It still works. And I mean, really, you don't have any like paint. Like, there's no paint transfer. Dry paint or otherwise. Now, I have had this issue in the past, and I did have this issue with a tank that we were doing, but in this case, it was fine. If you put chipping medium underneath a layer, like, that does have the potential to come up, and some of it on the silly putty did. Yeah, it makes sense because it's really not, adhering to the layer under it too well, and that's kind of the point.
That's the point of the chipping medium. Yeah.
Exactly. And I suppose you could look at it as a positive. When I pulled some of the silly putty up, it kind of came off on the corners where I had pushed down the hardest, so that it kind of tore the paint with the pattern of the camo. So that kind of looks cool on the tank, but it's certainly not something that, if you're not expecting, you're going to like. But just be aware of that. If you ever happen to find yourself in a situation where you've put chipping medium down on something, paint over the top, and are using silly putty to mask in that very specific situation.
Yeah, we only used the chipping medium on one old nasty tank.
Yeah.
For the rest, you were just using the silly putty to do like a 2-tone camo sort of thing. So you sprayed the tanks in one color. You covered about half of the tank in silly putty once that first coat had dried.
Yeah.
And then you did your second color in the exposed areas, and it was very satisfying to watch you peel off the silly putty afterwards to get some camo stripes on there.
I mean, it's a super satisfying process, because to paint those in, and I've seen people do it plenty of times where like, oh, I just use a paintbrush, like a bigger paintbrush. You get one of those big round paintbrushes, and you can make a nice straight line, but there is an amount of going back and forth between those colors to make it look right. And, obviously with an airbrush, you're going to do it 10 times faster. It's going to be smooth. But the silly putty being pushed down and kind of rounded as it kind of curls under, like it creates a very straight, rounded edge. Like, it's really nice. So, yeah, peeling that up is pretty awesome to see, because you're getting like exactly what you want. You didn't really have to try very hard, and that's a cool feeling.
Yeah, no, that was great. And so the tanks turned out well, partially because of that. We were able to get some good colors going on the troops. I think one of the things that surprised us at the very end was the bases on the troops. Yeah. So I think we both learned this one, but I've gotten in the habit of trying to use my airbrush to do black base rims on all of my miniatures, like infantry-sized miniatures. It's just a quick way to get that black rim on the bases relatively smooth, and there is just a little bit of overspray that makes it onto the base itself, the top of the base itself. But normally that overspray is from below, so it's an underspray, it's an undershot shade on whatever you got going on the bases. And it actually worked out really well with the color scheme and what we were doing on the bases. So we had colored all the bases in with skeleton bone, and we really liked the way that these troops were going over some arid desert or something like that.
It's a real nice contrast, yeah.
Yeah, the blue of the armor, the skeleton bone tan color was great. We really liked it. And we spent probably a week talking about what we would do to make those bases more interesting. Would we put on a little bit of oil wash over the skeleton bone sand color? Would we use some Agrax earth shade or some strong tone? Or what were we going to do on that one? And we couldn't figure it out. Every time we tried a wash or a pigment powder on those bases, they looked worse than the plain skeleton bone.
Yeah, which is weird.
And so we came to an agreement. We formed a pact that we would just not do anything else to the bases. They would be a flat skeleton bone color, flat tan, and that would kind of imply the dusty, arid nature. Maybe there's some abstraction there about the troops not even paying attention to what's going on the ground, it all being some sort of a dream. I don't know. We can't figure out anything better than flat tan. Yeah. Can't figure out anything better, let's not try. But then at the very end, when I was rimming the bases with the airbrush, just that little bit of underspray of black under the bottom of the grains of sand actually looked really, really good.
Yeah, like it gave all the little tiny rocks these nice little perfect shadows. It's very funny. And they look really good.
I think we both learned something from that. That was nice.
Oh, 100%. I'm going to be doing that from now on. Like, not necessarily keeping a one color type situation, but using the airbrush to do that, to even give a little hint of that shadow. Right at the very end too, if you've done everything and you're just getting kind of the lower parts of all of the things on your base, like they're just a little bit darker, and you didn't really have to spend too much time actually hand painting that. Like in this case, it was a very straightforward single color with a shadow, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That actually looks
that works.
Really good.
Yeah. So most people rim their base in black. If you are comfortable enough trying to use an airbrush to do that, just know that any overspray that you accidentally do, like black is a natural color for shadows. It doesn't look out of place. The overspray that you may end up with might actually make things better. So that's just a nice little coincidence. That works out well.
Well, and it's funny, you brought up that Buy Painted, the YouTube channel that was around for a long time, that went away for a long time, and is now back. That guy paints all of his bases with an airbrush. He rims all of them with an airbrush. He does all of it. And he purposely goes in with multiple colors and does shadows with an airbrush from the same angle.
And highlights.
And they always look, and highlights. They always look good. And it's like we're sitting here like, oh my goodness, look at how nice. Yeah. This dude's been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, but sometimes just trying it yourself or getting a friend to show it to you in person finally makes it sink in. So I guess what we're saying is get yourself a friend, do some hobby with them. maybe go to a convention, take some classes, whatever. There is an advantage to just in person doing some hobby with someone. If they have any skills at all, they might be able to teach you something.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if your cousin is terrible at painting, maybe maybe it won't help so much, but maybe you'll be able to teach them, and the art of teaching sometimes makes things a little clearer for you as well. So. Anyway, we painted up some Imperial Guard.
We did.
And I don't know, we can't really talk about it yet, but I'm just going to say this. Go on your YouTube page and make sure that you are following Pour Hammer, and make sure that you are following The Kieran Show. Pour Hammer and The Kieran Show.
Yes.
There's some good follows there. And all of this might make sense someday. Who's to say?
Yeah, someday.
Mm-hmm. Then we went on a road trip, didn't we, Casey?
Yeah, then we got in the car and we drove for 7.5 hours. And that was pretty good. Yeah, we were originally planning on flying from where I live to Salt Lake City. And we were going to go visit a pretty awesome mini factory, if you will, called Trenchworx.
Mm-hmm.
They manufacture, with an X at the end. Yeah. But we decided, okay, like, we were looking up plane tickets and all this stuff, and it was like, man, it's just expensive enough that like driving really wouldn't be that bad, other than like the time sink. But even then, like our flights with layovers and stuff would have been about the same amount.
Yeah, we couldn't find anything that didn't have a layover at the time. So
yeah, it sucked, but I mean, it's all for the best, Hop in the car, throw on some music, and we started going. And if you've ever driven through Nevada, like there's not a whole lot to see. It's pretty deserty and flat, and I mean sort of flat, but
there were some pretty cool hills and then some pretty cool mountains. So for somebody from the east like me, I thought it was actually pretty neat. For someone from that area, I bet that was really a very boring drive. Yeah.
Yeah, like driving across like the desert of Nevada and Utah and California, like there are definitely some really cool like rock formations and mountains and hills and stuff. And I do like that stuff here. It's just they're pretty far and few between. But like
I saw
there are definitely things,
wild horses, and I saw dust devils, and I saw the salt plains, and I felt like I was getting my money's worth as a tourist, and I didn't have to purposely do any touristy things. We were just getting where we needed to go. I much preferred it to looking out an airplane window or hanging out in an airport. I thought that turned out great.
Yeah. No, I had a lot of fun. And we ended up stopping at a game store on the way to the only game store between, well, it was basically between like Civilization in Reno and all the way to Salt Lake City. There was one game store, which is pretty insane. I need to like figure out if there are more in this state, because that seems kind of sad. There have to be more, but Google was not helping.
Yeah, there's just a little bit near where you live, and then in between Reno and Salt Lake City is the town of Elko, and Elko is home to Frank and Fred's.
Frank and Fred's, yeah. And we went to old Frank and Fred's.
Frank and Fred's Comic and Frank and Fred's Comic and Coins. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And they definitely had comics, which was cool. I did buy a comic book. Mm-hmm. And they had like a little bit of miniature painting stuff. They had like some Warhammer stuff, which did yield some fun things. They also had a good amount of paint and that kind of stuff, but definitely primarily a comic book shop. Yeah. It
was a very small store, but they packed a lot in there. Seemed to be well organized, had a decent variety. They had seemed like they had a lot of comics. Frank and Fred's Comic and Coins had no coins. They had
no coins,
coin collecting, like sleeves and binders and stuff. They had supplies for coin collecting, but I think they'd been there for a long time.
Yeah.
When they opened, the people who were really into collecting coins were still alive and still had disposable income. But
yeah,
things change over time. Things change.
And now they're selling like, Pokemon singles.
Yeah, and Funko Pops. Yeah.
Exactly.
But a lot of these small stores accidentally got taken over by Squishies and Funko Pops. This one had a couple feet of shelf space devoted to Funko Pops.
Yeah.
I had a couple of things for the kids, and acknowledgement of times are changing and you got to go with the flow. But I thought it was impressive the amount of older stuff and variety they had. So yeah, we walk into Frank and Fred's, and it's completely empty at first. And nobody behind the counter or anything, but we're looking around. We're purposely like making a little noise, whistling to make so that whoever's hanging out out back knows that we're there.
Like nobody's coming out, and it's like, are you watching us or
walking in like, oh, this place looks pretty cool. Look at this, Casey. Look at that. Oh, this is neat. Yeah, it's like approaching a bear in the woods. You gotta let them know that you're there. Like.
Exactly. Don't want to surprise the guy behind the counter. Yeah.
Don't want to surprise Frank or Fred.
Exactly. Yeah, we were hoping for a Frank or Fred for sure. I think if you name your store that, I feel like that's front and center. Like Frank and Fred are there every day, hanging out, reading comics together.
Well, a nerd comes from out back, and he's got a little bit of gray in his beard, and this is clearly his zone.
Yes,
man comes from out back,
store,
who has clearly been here for a while, and we get to talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been here for 18 years," and like a fool, I ask him, "So are you Frank or are you Fred? You've been here
like
for 18 years." Yeah. So what are you, Frank or Fred?
I'm Gary.
Yeah, you do it, Casey. I'm Gary.
I just did. That's what he said. He just goes, "Oh, I'm Gary." And that was it. Like Gary wasn't having any of that Frank and Fred nonsense, and did not.
Like he hasn't gotten that question before in the past 18 years. Like
yes, exactly. He's like, oh, no.
It offers no further explanation. And I was thinking about it today. I think that might have been Frank. I think Frank is just having a bit of a laugh. Like,
it's possible.
I think Frank thinks it's funny to be like, no, I'm Gary.
I mean, if that was like his auto response for the last 18, 20 years, whatever, then like I could see that. But to have the just the wherewithal just to be on top of something so hard when that question could come up, like there's no way. Like the best in the world can't even be that on top of something like that. You know what I mean? Like this dude
Gary.
just comes out of left field with "I'm Gary" in this monotone, flat way, and we're just both standing there like morons. Like nothing gets said, and we just move on. Like that's not fulfilling for anyone. And maybe he's telling people about it after, just being like these two guys.
Yeah, he threw us off balance. So yeah, he had the upper hand from that point on in the conversation.
Yeah,
and so
that's what it was.
Quick thinking, I try to reestablish control. Do you have any Star Wars customizable card games?
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, the old one from the 90s from Decipher? Yeah, let me get the binders." And this tiny card shop up on one of the shelves in this tiny little store, he pulls up binders of a game that's been dead for 25 years.
Yeah, exactly. Which is insane on its own. Like that he knew that he had them, knew what they were specifically with like sets and era and all this stuff. And then went and like, oh, I'm going to grab this ladder and go up in this little corner and here are these binders. Okay, that's insane.
Gary would be making more money if he had sold those 15 years ago and was using that shelf space for more Funko Pops. But no, Gary is not going to give in to... he's not giving in to modern pressures like that, I'll tell you what. So there I am. Gary is retaining the upper hand in this conversation. He's just like, "So you want to buy anything?" And I'm just looking through these binders, and I think I had most of the cards in there, but
feeling bad.
But I know I've lost this situation, so I got to buy something now. I know I've lost. So I pick out a couple of uncommon cards that I think are pretty cool. Like both the official rarity is uncommon, and like I might have one copy of each of them. You got
sure.
X-Wing Red 8 and the named pilot for Red 8. See, most Star Wars fans, They know who flies Red 5. You know, if it's a real Star Wars fan, they're going to know who flew Red 2 and Red 3. They might know the leader, the Red 1. They probably know Red 6, you know what I mean? They probably know about Jack Porkins, but Red 8, nobody knows. Nobody knows Red 8, and I can't even remember the pilot's name, and I just bought the card less than a week ago. It's like Riz Davis or something, I don't know. But
something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So I get a couple of cards out, like I'll buy this one and this one, and the binder's well organized, and there's like a little barcode on every card in the binder, and all the cards from this set.
Part, though.
Yeah, all the cards in the set are in alphabetical order. He has binders exquisitely organized for a print run from 99 of. It's not like a print run from 99 of Magic the Gathering. This is a dead game. Yeah, and he goes to price them. And he's looking up the prices like $1.30, $1.30. No, that's not right. And he gets on his phone, and he's going to Card Kingdom. He's going to Troll Trader. And he's like, oh, this one should be priced at 35 cents. And this one should be priced at 35 cents. So he takes 5 or 6 minutes to go into his computer, system.
Yes.
For 2 cards. I bought his last copy of each of these. He is updating his computer system of these old, stupid cards that are not worth his time, and not worth his time to update his system to reduce the amount he is charging me by $1 per card.
Yeah, like he was going to charge you $1.35, and then he's like, "Oh, this isn't right at all." Which you would think would be a bad thing, right? Oh, these are worth way more than this. I need to make sure.
I'm going to be paying like $5 for each of these cards that I don't really want. Yeah.
No, instead.
You're still shopping for moderately expensive models and a comic book and stuff, and he's ringing me up 2 cards. He's ringing me up 2 cards that comes to 75 cents. I hand him a $1 bill, and he hands me a quarter back.
Like he could have at least been like, "Hey, you got $1? Like, just give me $1. I'll give you these for $1." You know. That would have been fine.
But before he was looking anything up, that could have been the case.
Yeah, for sure. But even if he didn't need that they were 35 cents.
Yeah, he didn't need to update his software with the modern price of Red 8 and Riz Davis. You know,
I should go back. And like see if I could sell those cards back to him or something.
I forgot these 2 cards in Casey's car. This is the rest of the story.
I'm not trying to jump to the end there.
I was in the situation where I was in a new game store, and you want to buy something, and he got up on a little ladder to pull down these binders, and so like I'll buy an X-Wing that I'm not sure if I have already. I'll get something out of here. And the idea was to give him a couple of bucks to like, I'm a paying customer, and I got something kind of neat here. Thanks, Gary. But the end result is that he got 75 cents out of the transaction.
He could have gotten at least $1.50.
He should have gotten $2.60, but he talked himself down to below $1 USD. Yeah.
God, I hope he is Frank or Fred, because if Frank or Fred are actually listening, I don't think Gary's going to be working there for much longer.
Well, they'll give him another 18 years, I'm sure. Like,
I'm sure you're right. This isn't the first time he's gone, well, this isn't right.
If any of these people are listening, Gary was extremely helpful. It was just a funny interaction.
It's a very funny interaction is all. No, there's nothing wrong with Gary, of course. That is just very funny. Like, that's a lot of steps to go through for just not anything important.
Yeah. But I did forget those 2 cards in your car, so if you're ever driving past Elko again, Casey, and you don't want those cards, you can try selling them back, see if you can get, I don't know what they do on trade-ins, probably less than half the value, but you might be able to get like 30 cents back. Yeah. That'd
be interesting. That would be interesting. We'll see.
We'll see.
I don't know.
Maybe not worth the gas of pulling into the parking lot, but maybe it is.
That's the other thing. Yeah, it's like to get to the yeah. It's when you're talking about, nickels and dimes, and it's like it's fine. Like it's $1.20 or 30 or something for this card. That seems fine.
Yeah. Gary, we both have better things to do here.
Online.
Yeah, $2 is fine. That's.
Yeah.
But no, he earned a customer, and I think he actually did make a little money off of you, didn't he?
Maybe. Like, I think probably. So I ended up buying a couple of model things. I bought a comic book that was new, that I don't go to a comic book shop that often, but it jumped out, so I grabbed it, and that was good. And then I got some
Boy.
Moon Knight, yeah.
Moon Knight.
I've had Moon Knight comics for a long time, and this is like a new run. It was like a #1 with a bunch of variant covers, and yeah, it's been a long time since I've bought a comic book, so it seemed like we were there, and that seemed fun. The Warhammer section had a decent amount of stuff. I mean, it's pretty nice in these like little stores that are packed like that. There are those weird things that you're probably not going to see because they've just been sitting on the shelf for however long. And they definitely had stuff that had just been sitting on the shelf. A lot of it was still, full retail price or whatever, so not necessarily worth it. But there was a used section that had a couple of smaller things. I ended up paying $17 for a new in blister pack of Catachans, like snipers. So that's pretty cool. And we've been working on this Imperial Guard army and all this stuff, and it's like, these seem neat, and they're all metal, they're old. Yeah, that was decent. And I don't know if 17 is too high. I don't know what prices they are, but brand new in the package, that seemed decent. So I feel good about that one. And then I ended up getting like this Kill Team, like $5 for this set of, I think it was all of the tokens, like in hard plastic. And I think there's some other stuff that it came with, but a whole token set, and it's like, that's nice, like a nice set of tokens that I don't have for a game that I technically have and have played once, but would like to play again at some point. So yeah, I would assume that the tokens they maybe got for free in like some tournament pack or whatever for the store, but the Catachans were used. So they were selling them on behalf of someone else. So who knows? Maybe they made some money off of me.
I like to think so, because they didn't make any money off of me.
Right.
I don't know how Gary acquired those cards in the first place. Hopefully he didn't pay too much for them. So anyway.
Yeah, you never know.
Anyway, we had a fun little stop at Frank's and Fred's Comics and Coins, and then we kept on trucking.
Yeah, pretty much. That was like that. Well, a little more than halfway, according to Gary, to Salt Lake City. It's about the halfway mark, which honestly is fine. If it's the only major city halfway between here and two places.
You got us again. Yeah, we were just like, we're on a road trip going from here to here. This is about the halfway mark, and Gary just cuts us off a little more than halfway.
No, it's more than halfway. It's like, okay.
Well, that's great. That's great. We're more than halfway there. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty uneventful, like driving the rest of the way. We get in Salt Lake City. Hotel's fine, whatever. But then we go to Trenchworx, which is pretty cool. You want to just jump in on Trenchworx there?
All right.
What does Trenchworx do?
So Trenchworx is a model making company run by Dave Baker, and they themselves have a line of like tanks for historicals and stuff like that, like World War I, World War II tanks. But they may be best known for manufacturing miniatures for other creators. So I'm going to forget some of the clients, but like some of their better known clients are MCDM, the Matt Goville's thing, They're producing goblins and dragons and all kinds of other stuff. There's Victorian miniatures with, female soldiers and tanks and things that are compatible with Imperial Guard units and stuff like that. So there, kind of some proxies in there, but Victorian miniatures, they make, I think, pretty much all of that stuff. Found out that they made, like one-off miniatures for a few other small companies. They got the Knuckle Duster minis. They produce Knuckle Duster minis, so the Wild West gunslingers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's something Traveling Troubadour, or what was it called? Tabletop Troubadour.
Sounds right.
I got some goblins with mustaches. I know that.
Yeah.
Trenchworx makes some ants. They make orcs. They make, but they do kind of contract work of producing miniatures for a lot of folks, and also they kind of run Kickstarter fulfillment for some folks. So like
for people like Victoria and their stores, I think their actual fulfillment in general, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So a couple of months ago, I bought into the Jagged Edge Goblins box, which I think is in the mail now, which is kind of a campaign setting from MCDM. And so they are the maker of the models and fulfiller of campaigns, and also fulfillment for just web stores for a lot of these creators. And so we got to see how models are made in 4 different materials. And we got to see kind of the organization that keeps this all going. And it's a really interesting business type, because they have, I don't know, thousands of SKUs, like thousands of different models that they make, mostly at pretty low volume. And they're retaining a relatively small inventory of each. But as they run out of any one thing, then they just crank up production of whatever little Victoria's sniper kit they need to do, or what have you. And it was really cool to see how organized they have to be to make that work. Yeah. Like, Dave is an engineer, and that was very apparent in the way that the 4 different types of model casting were constructed, and like the workspaces were all these perfect little U-shaped workspaces, so that there's the place where you vacuum out pump in the silicone. There's the place where you do the vacuum pumping out of the bubbles of the silicone, and you move to the next station where you're making the molds and filling the molds and vacuums and pumps and injectors, and just every workstation is this awesome little U that is super efficient and productive. And then they just have all these little cards and numbers to organize everything and keep it moving along. And so it's just very clear that it was run by an engineer, so that any of this is actually viable.
Because otherwise, I honestly don't know how it could be. Right. Like, it is intense. Like, the actual, like, scale of work, even on a small scale, is a lot. And without systems and units being put in place like he had, I don't know that you could actually do that. Like, it would just, you would not make money, I guess, is more of the point. Like, it'd be a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, I think we met 5 employees while we were there. And one was a relative of Dave, but the other 4 had been there for, 2 of them had been there for 5 years each, and 2 of them had been there for more than 10 years each. And so it was cool to see, each of these were very skilled employees with a ton of technical knowledge, ton of very specific skills. And then working within this just well-designed, well-oiled system to get things made efficiently. And then we get to spend some time looking at each of the 4 different model-making techniques that they have there.
Yeah, I really like doing that, because I mean, I feel like we've heard about a lot of the ways that models that we end up with get made. It's like, in theory, I know how all of this stuff works and looks and everything, but to actually see it in person and to kind of go through each step of that process, it's a whole different perspective. It's kind of insane how we end up getting models. Yeah.
Yep. So the techniques that they have there are 3D printing, are like a 2-part resin casting. They have cyocast, and they have metal casting. And these are all things that we're vaguely familiar with and have maybe talked about before. But it was really interesting to see all of them under one roof. And the reason for that is they're actually all viable. They are making models in all 4 of these materials, selling models in all 4 of these materials, and depending on what project they're working on, the relative amount of those 4 might go up and down. But none of those 4 has dominated the others. None of those 4 is obsolete. They're all good for different things. And so we got into talking about, turns out that 2-part casting resin is the cheapest material that they have. Like gram per gram, resin is a pretty good material for like a solid tank, or a great unclean one, like something with a lot of mass to it, or a dragon. The cost per weight of that material is very, very low. But on the other hand, for silicone, or the silicone molds that they use for casting the 2-part resin, the actual molds only last about 20 cycles. Yeah. And so it's more labor intensive to make those. So small batches of larger models, resin's a good material. Mm-hmm. The metal models. Metal is obviously gram per gram, it's expensive. But metal is a lot of grams.
It is heavy, and it
is also expensive.
Yes.
Metal is a lot of grams, and each of those grams is quite expensive. Yes.
Many, many expensives.
But the molds for casting metal last hundreds of uses, and they're actually very, very fast. So another consideration to all of this is just the time it takes to run a single model. And like two-part casting resin, after you go through the cycle of pumping out the bubbles and then repressurizing everything, then they wait, I think normally half an hour for the liquids to fully go solid. Whereas metal casting, it's
instant.
Yeah. Almost instant. You've got a spinning mold, you pour in molten metal into the top, and you get your models out very, very quickly, as Casey is demonstrating. And there's a little bit of like temperature regulation to make sure that the mold isn't too hot before you use it again.
Cooling fans and that.
Yeah. The time required to make a metal is by far the fastest. Or although the actual labor required, the 3D print is the fastest to go from getting a file to getting a model. Yeah. Anything you have to make a mold for, obviously there's time required for making a mold, but it was fascinating to see like the pros and cons of all these different materials. And that's aside from just what the customer wants and what they like best. Like metal, I don't necessarily like to paint metal, but holding a metal model is nice. It is. There's a classic feeling there.
Just the way it looks and everything. I actually am curious as to taking some of the models that we did get and putting them side by side and seeing if you can even tell the difference.
Once they're painted?
Once they're painted, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we mentioned in the last podcast, we commissioned Trenchworx to make some models for us. We had files that we got from Adam at Twin Goddess Miniatures. We got a big sister goblin called Elma and a little brother goblin called Nugget. And so we've had 2 model designs that we had Trenchworx make. And kind of for the demonstration purposes, they made us these 2 designs in all 4 different materials. So we've got 3D prints, we've got metal, we've got COcast, and we've got resin. And it is fascinating just to look at the same model in 4 different materials and think about the pros and cons there. And that's definitely going to be a full video from me. I'm excited to make that one, but fascinating to see the same model in all those different materials and to see what goes into making those.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have a particular favorite out of the 4? The 3D printing, COcast, resin, and metal?
So I think I really like the metal. Okay. I do like the metal. I am normally anti-metal, but there's just such a classic, real feeling to having your design expressed as a chunk of pewter. And the other thing is, we gave the big sister, Elma, has like a suitcase. Like she's walking around with either a MacGuffin in a case, or she's walking around with a big old med kit or something. But she's got a suitcase, and it's like $1 worth of metal for just this one bit.
Yeah, the suitcase is worth as much as like the body of the model. Yeah.
And we just thought it would have been much cheaper to give her a dagger or give her a wand. I don't know.
Something, just a nice pistol. I don't know. Something small.
A nice snub pistol. Yeah.
But that does give us perspective.
But yeah, Dave was calculating it out, and he didn't look super happy about the amount that the suitcase was costing. They were all like awesome to hang out with, and just amazing to pick their brains and see how models were made. The resin, the 2-part resin, also just turned out really smooth, like really high detail, and something about it just feels great. Like that, for whatever reason, there weren't really any mold lines that I could see on the resin cast. I'll have to look closer, but they did a really good job of just making the models look pristine.
Yeah.
The CyoCast is what we went with because it's a little bit cheaper to produce, but the reason it's a little bit cheaper to produce is because of the labor time is so low. And basically Dave said, look, it's only going to take us a couple of days to get it made this way, and we can fit you in. And so part of the reason we went with CyoCast is just because Dave could fit us in to the schedule, because it, very quick to, once you get those mold baits, very quick to crank them through that injection machine.
Yeah, you're getting 4 out of each shot of like injected plastic, and it just doesn't take very long. Like I made I don't know, maybe 30 of them. Yeah, 30 models, 30, 40 models or whatever in total. Yeah, just by myself, which was pretty sweet. But
yeah. You get hired. Your efficiency was pretty good there.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of 3D printing too. Like the masters all start as 3D prints.
Yeah.
So they had a special high temperature resin that they could put into the molds, like make a master, put it into the molds, have it survive the vulcanization process as the mold is going from a soft silicone to a hard silicone, but kind of almost rubbery kind of feeling material.
Yeah, like tire rubber.
Yeah, and so they did it that way. They also have a system of if they're going to need multiple masters, like when they're using the soft silicone molds for 2-part resin, they will. Actually, the first time they're using that mold, they will cast blue resin for masters that can be used to then make more molds. So they got like an amplification chain of they print out a couple of perfect 3D prints, use those to cast blue resin masters which they then retain to be able to use those blue resin masters to make as many of the soft silicone molds as they need. But they had systems on systems on systems to make this all work, because it's, they're making dozens or hundreds or sometimes thousands of miniatures, but in the scheme of things, it is relatively low batches. And so the one material that they don't use is HIPs, high pressure polystyrene, high impact polystyrene, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that you see from like Archon Studios and what Games Workshop uses, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so that's the type of material that is only viable with very large batch sizes. But here we got to explore four of the most common, probably the four most common materials for smaller or medium-sized batches. And it was fascinating. And fascinating that, again, that all four are viable. Nothing has truly replaced anything else. Nothing is truly obsolete.
The only thing that I've noticed when we were looking at all this stuff is the only thing that's actually gotten replaced is hand sculpting. Because now even all the masters for every process go through the 3D printer. Yeah. I think a lot of times, even the hand sculpted things now go through a 3D scanner. Yeah. And get digitized, and then, masters get printed and whatever else. Yeah, it's such an easier way for them to get that like high quality, multiple masters going. Like you were saying, they changed the color on their first, kind of run of masters to get the perfect ones and have them set aside, and they can just continue to replicate those. And even like the high temperature resin from the 3D printer. Like we watched Dave put together a mold for the metal models, right? He made a mold. He showed us how it gets vulcanized and all this stuff. It's really cool. But the stuff that went in was just 3D prints of our models. And then they got smashed at like 1,500 pounds per square inch and cooked 350 degrees for, I don't know, it was like 2 hours or 3 hours or something, whatever it is. And then like the mold was made, and the metal models that came out are fantastic. And those 3D prints, like you could put together and build, and you would have no idea that happened.
I saved them.
Right? You did.
Yeah,
I thought
I
so.
saved them. Yep.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah. Like that's where
there's kind of the understanding that some of the 3D prints that they use as the initial masters, some of them just get destroyed in the vulcanization process when the soft mold material is becoming hard mold material. A lot of temperature, a lot of pressure. But in this case, the high temperature 3D printer resin survived just fine. But they the 3D prints that they make are good. In terms of us trying to make and sell goblins, for whatever reason, I feel like I wanted to have something cast. Like it feels like I could, if given enough time, I could print these all myself, but I can't do any of these other techniques myself. And unless I get Trent to help me, and even then, the efficiency is very nice of having people who know what they're doing and have just the perfect workstation set up to do it in.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking while we were even there, we were watching again the 3D prints going into make the metal mold, right? And it reminded me of a video that Trent actually made probably like a year ago, where they were taking 3D prints and they were pressing them into molds and trying to get them to work, and he was having issues, and I don't know if those ever got solved. I mean, it's like his friend's shop, similar type of setup kind of thing, spinning metal. But it's like people have been trying to make this stuff work, and they're experimenting and they're doing all these things. It's like, we're at that point, like we can do this. It's really, really cool, and it's not been very long. For this technology is not, I mean, we're talking the last like 5-6 years that now this is perfectly like viable, and that's just insane to me.
And they definitely were doing some 3D printing production, and there are some shapes that absolutely work better on a 3D printer. So any of the castings, you have to make the model kind of flat, or the bits have to be relatively flat, because you're thinking of a 2-part mold coming together, filling up that 2-part mold, pulling it back apart, pulling the minis out. And so there are certain shapes that you can't make. So the classic example is you can't make a bolter that has a hollow barrel. Like, there are just some shapes you can't make with a 2-part mold. The soft silicone for the resin casting, like there's a little more flexibility there, so you can have some undercut patterns, and the flexibility of the silicone allows you to pull that out of the mold. But for the most part, there are just some shapes that you can't make with the mold casting processes that you absolutely can make with a 3D printer. And so, the models that we had Trenchworx make ended up being 4 pieces that folks are going to have to glue together. They're very natural break points, and I don't think it's going to be a problem. But when those are on a 3D printer, you can just print a solid 1-piece model. If you're casting them to do the reproduction, you got to break them into pieces to pseudo 2D the whole thing.
Yeah, like if you think about, I think most people know Slambo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that's I think is a pretty good example of how something has to be laid out that's almost 2-dimensional on its own. It's very flat. It's wide, but it's not deep, right? There's a little bit of depth there, but it's very straightforward. So
they're
that's
not
kind of
undercuts
what you have
to
to
it.
think. Yeah, exactly. This is how you have to think about it. But then, even then, like, okay, we couldn't necessarily make our models like that, or we didn't want to. So they just cut it up into pieces and made those pieces a flat plane that has a little bit of here and there, and that's no big deal. So yeah, it's interesting. There are ways around some of those things, but doing it in one piece obviously is the most cost effective, and if you can get something that you like, that's going to be the best way to go.
Yep. So anyway, the one other difference between the 4 different materials: metal, you can infinitely recycle that. You can just melt down any metal models that you don't want, get the goo back, recast it into something better. And the same with Siocast. The plastic might have kind of a limit on how many cycles you can do that to. Yeah. But the Siocast, you can take the sprues or miscast things, melt them back down again, and that's all good. Yeah. The 3D print and the 2-part casting resin, you can't just melt them down again. And so their waste system for those was a little more entertaining. They throw those into a bucket and sell like mash bags, basically, of just random stuff. Yeah. Or what happens is Casey comes by and just takes most of their garbage away.
Yeah. So Dave gave me a box, and I think we spent like an hour going through the garbage, like the legitimate garbage too. Some of it I pulled out of the actual garbage can, because I did question their judgment in terms of what was usable. But it is what it is. They go through a lot of stuff, but a lot of the stuff that is in there, like Brent was saying, does get eventually sold in kind of like this is a miscast off cut baggie, right? And there are useful things in there. It's like, this one, like on the end that something broke off or there's a bubble in it. We're not going to sell that, which is really cool to see, because and one of the things that they talked about quite a bit is that every person that's there understands miniatures. They paint miniatures. They assemble miniatures. So they're not going to make something and just be like, oh, that's fine, that's good enough, if they wouldn't want to then use it or paint it. So if there is an imperfection, they go, nope, this isn't going to be good, so we're going to put it in this miscast pile.
Yeah, their miscast pile had a lot of things with extremely minor flaws, or things that we wouldn't even identify as flaws. So that was both encouraging to see on their quality control, but also that was fun for you to pick through and maybe rescue something from their trash can.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there was a good amount of stuff in there that are gonna be like bits and pieces and arms or legs or a cape or a head or whatever that are definitely gonna be fun to make into something else.
Right on.
I'm looking forward to doing that. Like the fact that even then, like at home, like if you've got a 3D printer and it doesn't quite work out the way you were hoping, like it's still useful. Like there's no reason to just throw stuff away like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, it can eventually be part of a terrible mishmash or terrain, or there's something worth doing there for sure.
Exactly.
Worst case, glue it all down to a baking pan and it's a dry pallet. Yeah, there's always something. So Casey did his rescuing in the trash at Trenchworx there, and all in all, a pretty good visit. And I'm certainly gonna make a video about it, and maybe if you were able to rescue something, you'll make a video about it.
Oh, I'm definitely gonna make a video about it. If anything, it'll be touching on a little bit of some of the processes. But then obviously I have a giant box of toys to make something out of. So we're gonna do something. Because there's no way I'm not going to use that. It's too good. It's too good.
Too good.
Yeah.
All right. What else we got, Casey? I don't know. All you folks out there, follow Trenchworx, see what they're doing for Kickstarters.
They got a lot. Yeah.
They got a lot. They at the time they were getting ready for a war of 1838, Winter War, the Finnish, the Russians versus the Finns. They're doing some projects for that, and also it seems like they're on a train of doing Kickstarters for MCDM, like Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting sort of stuff, and they're currently fulfilling the one for goblins, and they are about to move on to hobgoblins, the natural progression of things. Yes.
And eventually we'll get to kobolds.
I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but kobolds may have been mentioned. Yeah, that.
I'm just saying in general, if you follow that line of thinking, like it's gonna get there. Dungeons and or dragons will show up. Yeah.
But yeah, that definitely is one of the settings from the MCDM folks. So that's going. I don't know. In other news, our goblins were sculpted by Twin Goddess Minis, and so at the time of this podcast drop, you might want to check out a little Kickstarter called "Send in the Goblins." It's another source of goblins for another RPG campaign.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of goblins right now. It's not bad. Not bad at all. Dude, I am seriously though looking forward to assembling these metal minis that we did get, because of course I'm going to, and I'm gonna paint them up, and I'm pretty excited about that.
I'll hold you to it, Casey.
I know.
I'm gonna paint these models. We'll see.
Well, hopefully we can figure something out. I need to go see your studio space, as it were, and really you know.
Are you allergic to cats? Because I have cats.
I should be all right. I have a cat.
So you say.
I've had cats my whole life. I might be allergic to them. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you are welcome to visit anytime, Casey. We'll do this again. We'll do a different variant. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. We'll do a different thing where we
go fishing with goblins.
Exactly. That's not a terrible idea, honestly.
It's a terrible idea.
The people want the canoe. Brent, they want the canoe. What are you doing?
Well, on that note.
Yeah. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. And as always, we appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.